oft-postponed meeting that we're having today. Please accept our
Are they
humble
giving us an
apologies.
option for us to suspend their budgets as a ministry or as an agency of the government for an hearing that will have taken place more than 3 weeks ago?
Okay.
Yes, you have a full grasp of every. The PAMSEC finance is running away as well. Is he afraid of the camera? Please, give me the constitution. So I don't know how you want us to continue, because if there are questions relating to the Office of Accountant General or Minister for State for Finance, who takes it? So we are worried. We don't know how to move forward. The budget minister came late after waiting for him for several hours. He's here. He managed to come. While the Minister of State is nowhere near, the Accountant General's office is somewhere, maybe relaxing. NRS, I was thinking the NRS chairman too will be here. Is he here? Okay. Yes, while waiting for other relevant agencies or members of the economic team to join us, Honorable Minister of Finance, please go ahead and address the committee.
Thank you. The distinguished senators, the administration's broader economic strategy, as you know, is anchored on a three-phase program and strategy of market correction, stabilization, and growth acceleration, with the aim of getting to 7% per annum growth, which is the level at which we believe that at least 30% of GDP will be invested, and that will help to grow the economy at a level which millions of Nigerians will be lifted out of poverty. So that's the prioritization, is to attract significant private investment through well-structured PPPs, public asset optimization, and enhanced domestic resource mobilization. And as you are probably aware, the medium-term goal is 18% of GDP, tax revenue as 18% of GDP. And all these are critical at a time when there's less money coming internationally. There's less money for development coming from ODA, from foreign direct investment, and instead of that, the biggest flow from developing countries is debt servicing, which is out, more is going out than in debt servicing than is coming in foreign direct investment, and indeed in overseas development and assistance. So throughout this journey, Mr. President has provided strategic oversight, and the latest of his successes is $20 billion investment by Shell. So that's the direction of travel. And I'd just like to point out one or two other things. One is that recall that before the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, we relied heavily on ways and means to finance large fiscal deficits. And it's important to note that due to the impact of the weakening Naira, when the subsidy was removed in May 2023, it did not immediately yield the expected benefits because the pump price of PMS was at fixed levels till 2024. I'd just like to point out also that the checking of ways and means was essential for restoring macroeconomic stability, even though it meant there was a funding gap. It meant that we now had...
You are disrupting the city.
Please, you want to close the door, please.
I do love that one, give me the key. Please go ahead.
Distinguished chairman, and distinguished senators, since then the office of the Minister and Coordinating Minister of the Economy has worked closely with central bank to stabilize the economy through prudent treasury management, fiscal consolidation, debt sustainability, structural reforms, and active engagement with our development partners who, of course, have the cheapest source of funding. Let me just also point out, if I may, with respect, that regarding fiscal performance, it's important to distinguish between federation revenue and FGN, Federal Government of Nigeria revenue. The federal government receives the largest share of the main federation account, 52.68%, but it receives a lower share. Down now, last year was 15%, now it's down to 10% of other non-oil revenues such as VAT. It's important to make that distinction. This means that oil revenue underperformance. Oil revenue underperformance. In 2024 and 2025 impacted on the federal government more severely than the states and local governments, than the subnationals, because the oil revenue goes straight to federation account, whereas the other items in federation account are lopsidedly allocated. So in 2024, the federation achieved 100% performance with actual revenue of 27.84 trillion naira. And this 100% revenue, federation, the federation achieved 100%. Yes, federation. This outcome was driven by non-oil revenue performance, as oil and gas significantly underperformed. Oil and gas revenue underperformed, so it was non-oil, and we have pointed out the non-oil favors subnationals. In 2025, the overall revenue performance stood at, and I say this in the absence of my colleagues like the Director of Budget and even the Chairman NRS. 50.
Sorry to say, when you use the word non-oil, favor the subnational, only the price aspect of it favors the subnational. So we should keep that in mind.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Okay, non-oil, largely VAT. So in 2025, revenue performance of the federation was 53%, with actual revenue of 35.46 trillion, compared to the projected, budgeted 67.43 trillion. And oil and gas performance was 18.92%. So that's giving us the narrative of where the revenue is perhaps lacking. Despite the weak oil and gas revenue, federation revenue improved between 2024 and 2025 at 27.4% to reach 35.46 trillion naira. As I said, this was driven by non-oil growth, but also exchange rate gains and also enhanced non-oil revenue collection. The federal government aggregate revenue has grown over the last 3 years, and it was 22 trillion as of November 2025. However, these increases are largely nominal and reflect exchange rate gains and improved administrative efficiency, especially in the non-oil sector. Federal government aggregate performance for 2024, as I said, stood at 81%. Federal government with 20.98 trillion naira as against projected the 20.98 as opposed to 25.88. So there was a 5 trillion naira shortfall in 2024. Debt service obligations exceeded the budget by approximately 4 trillion naira, rising to 12.63 trillion naira. And this was driven by higher domestic treasury bill rates. So the interest rate on treasury bills that we made was 8%, and it rose as high as 24%. As well as the fact that there was interest rate adjustment and also the exchange rate. So the dollar value of the dollar value of the debt in naira went up, but also in naira terms, the debt servicing was higher because when we translate it to naira, you have a higher figure because of the exchange rate factor. The MDA's capital expenditure underperformed significantly, only achieving 51.8%, as against that is 5.8 trillion as opposed to 11.2 trillion. So there was a shortfall of 6 trillion naira. When we combine the revenue shortfall and the excess debt service versus budgeted amounts, the government faced an overall funding gap of about 9 trillion naira, necessitating the prioritization of essential obligations, pensions, salaries, statutory transfers. As of November 2025, federal government of Nigeria revenue performance was, and this is November, not, I think by the time the budget was presented, it was presented with September figures. So these are updated figures, which, as I said, Director Budget and even Accountant General can corroborate. So with prorated projected revenue of 37.13 trillion naira and actual receipt of 22. So there was again a shortfall of about 5 trillion, 15 trillion. Yes, as of November. As of November, there was 59 point.
The 22 trillion you mentioned, is it as of September or as of
November?
November. It's an updated figure.
Yes, updated figure. And the shortfall, as we've identified, largely from underperformance of oil and gas revenue. Mr. Chairman, you had mentioned, you made a comment regarding the veracity of oil and gas revenue. So I'm sure that is a point which we will return to when, in particular, Nigerian Revenue Service, which is in charge of collecting it, arrives. So, oil and gas revenue achieved 36.9% performance. On the expenditure side in 25, on the expenditure side, as at November 2025, spending stood at 85%. The MDA's capital budget performed at 23.74%.
As at 25.
Yes. Debt service exceeded the budgeted 1.4 trillion, rising. It exceeded the budget by 1.4 trillion. And as we know, the issue of debt service, it's one of those obligatory. And you yourself, distinguished chairman, you are on air pointing out the importance and the critical nature of meeting debt service obligations just a couple of days ago. So, by 1.4 trillion naira. So with significant shortfalls in actual revenue versus budget, cash receipts by federal government of Nigeria from revenue sources and new borrowings in 2025 barely covered the recurring expenditure and thereby constraining the ability to fund capital. Notwithstanding the tight fiscal space, government, as a result of the impact of the bold reforms of Mr. President and the expected lag in resulting benefits, funded a number of intervention packages to cushion the impact on households and businesses, ranging from wage awards and then eventually wage increases, and direct transfers. Direct transfers have been given to nearly 10 million households, or 9 million households as of now. And of course, there was the CNG intervention, all aimed at cushioning the spike in the cost of living. Let me also address the issue of contractors' liabilities, which is part of the scenario of 2025. Whilst efforts are underway to resolve all verified outstanding contractor liabilities, it's important to state that the accumulation of contractor liabilities have largely resulted, distinguished Chairman, from non-compliance with provisions, the applicable provisions of the Procurement and Public Revenue Management and Control laws, such as Fiscal Responsibility Act, Public Procurement Act, as well as the guidelines and circulars issued by, amongst others, Ministry of Finance. Non-compliance with those laws is what led to an accumulation of contractor debt. And in finalizing the 2026 budget based on performance of oil and non-oil revenue versus budget amount, it's critical to review the reasons for the wide disparity so that we can ensure that all efforts are directed at achieving the stated oil and gas revenue, so that once the revenue for particularly the oil and gas projections is met, the federal government portion of the federation account will be buoyant enough to assist in having a small, not having a large gap, as we have witnessed, between the oil and gas revenue and between the budgeted revenue of the federal government and the actual, which is based on disparity in oil and gas revenues. Distinguished senators, let me take this opportunity to clarify the public discourse regarding the current debt stock of around 152 trillion naira. This increase compared to 2023 is driven primarily by transparent accounting. Thank you. By transparent accounting corrections, not excessive new borrowing by the present administration. The major drivers of that figure are: one, recognition of historical ways and means totaling 30 trillion naira, which was just left outside and not counted as part of the obligations of government. Secondly, there was a revaluation of external debt, and given that in naira terms, when the exchange rate was adjusted, that meant that the dollar portion of total debt went up in naira terms, and it went up by 49 trillion naira. So out of 152 trillion naira, you have 30 which is brought into the books, which was left out of the books, and you have another 49. which was just an adjustment, not from new borrowing, but from revaluing at the new exchange rate the dollar borrowing. So that is 79 out of 152. Importantly, over the past 3 years, the administration's borrowing has remained within approved budget limits, and it's approximately 27 trillion in total. And so that stands in contrast to what if I may say so, is a certain perception of uncontrolled borrowing. You asked me also, the 2026 budget. The key item I think I've referred to regarding the 2026 budget of 58.4 trillion naira, which distinguished senators you have before you, is the fidelity, the accuracy, and the probability of achieving the oil and gas revenue. And on that, I will ask, because under the widely acclaimed, not just in Nigeria but across the world, tax reform program, it is the newly minted Nigeria Revenue Service that collects the revenue. So perhaps it is fitting that the person that would have looked at that figure of oil and gas revenue, particularly from the NUPRC, is the chairman, NRS, so maybe he can speak to the figures which he has got before him and which he has the task of collecting.
You want to do the floor now?
With your permission, sir, on this specific item, because you asked me to speak to the 2026 budget, and you asked me.
This figure, how attainable is this figure, and how achievable is this figure in line with the current reality of the gap in shortfall which we have witnessed within the last 2 years. The NRS chairman, if you are ready, we are ready. You have the floor. Please go ahead.
Budget office, they are privy to what Mr. President is about to do before projecting that what they have in the book. If not for what they've done, I would have said that we should take caution in taking into consideration the figure that we have as the oil projection. Because if you look at it, it's roughly 47% of the total oil revenue coming to Federation, including what goes to oil producers, which is not, in that sense, there is no way that would have been something we should effectively plan with. But taking into consideration the new executive order that we have now, so I will say that you give us time to include that in our projection, then we come back to you to know what we should look at as far as that revenue line is concerned.
What about the non-oil revenue?
No, that projection is in line. The non-oil revenue, which is what actually tests the diversity and then of our economy, and then the results of Mr. President's reform. So whatever that we put there as non-oil revenue is what is within our hand, within our capacity, and with the leadership of the CMEs and all the economic team. I think the projection for that non-oil revenue is achievable, and it's, we stand by it. And going by our, with your help, with your help, we will do. But don't forget that Mr. President's focus is not to overtax, it's just to tax rightly, and that is our position. So we have the process to increase the compliance, to widen the tax base, and take into consideration the new tax law that has come to being. We believe that we will achieve the target that we set.
Before coming back,
I think at this stage,
they speak to 2026, 2025 projection, and in their submission, they also alluded to the fact that there was a challenge, and the challenge is from both the 2024-2025 budget estimate and looking into 2026. They equally agree that the projection of 30 trillion revenue, oil revenue, is also a little bit of a challenge. But in line of the executive order signed yesterday by the president, and that is because we've not in any way interfered with the PIA Act since it has been passed, and that is two areas that the Nigerian Senate should look into in amending, so that for once we can bring more money into the revenue coffers of the government. I still have other questions regarding the JV asset and other things, and also regarding the quantum amount that we use in servicing debt in every financial year, and also the huge amount of the debt stock of 152 trillion. But before I go into details of that, my dear colleague, I want to yield the floor to you to ask questions, to speak to the budget, speak to every item that you care to, the economy itself, government policies, programs, and everything. They are here before us to speak. I start with Senator Abiru. Okay, then I'll come with you, David.
The declaration of state of emergency by Mr. President. The declaration of state of emergency on the security sector by Mr. President implies that a place of prominence will be given to the security architecture with regard to funding, so that they can discharge their constitutional responsibility without let or hindrance. But in the course of our interaction with the various security agencies, we have discovered that they got zero allocation with regard to their capital budget. And this is completely in contradiction to the state of the emergency declared by Mr. President on the security sector. It seems like we are appropriating and reprobating at the same time. We cannot declare a state of emergency on the security sector and fail to fund them properly in consonance with that declaration. So I think even within the limited resources that we have, and in view of the avalanche of security problem that we have across the nooks and crannies of the country, the security sector should be given priority, even within the limited constraints of resources that we have to fund our budget. Thank you.
The honorable ministers here present. I think I'll try as much as I can to be very specific and make it as simple as I can. Now, I would like to start with the last conversation between the Honorable Minister of Finance and the Chairman of NRS, and that's speaking to the oil revenues. And the contribution I'd like to make around that is that, one, the assumptions for this current financial year, I think we need to be very practical with ourselves. It is estimated at about 1.84 million barrels per day. Now, in this estimation, I would like clarification as to, is there any portion of it that is encumbered? I.e., is there a portion of it that you are using to service all of your either inherited oil contracts that you have had in the past? And I'm sure you understand what I mean. Has that been factored in, so that, you know, if you look at the oil revenues for last year, as at mid-year, the performance was very dismal at about 41%, and I hope I'm correct. Now, so the question I'm trying to ask is that the estimate for this year, have you factored in all of the forward oil contracts or oil sales that you have done? Have you backed them out so as to be very realistic? Because I don't know what accounted for the dismal performance of prior year. I'm assuming, so what the clarification I want is that we need to get that clarification so as to be very sure that the projections you are making are very realistic. That is one. Then two is that in all of this, in the area of debt service, we all know, I mean, whether there are past debt obligation, it is what it is today. And the fact remains that we need to continue to service it. Now, in the current budget, we have an estimate of close to 15 trillion earmarked for debt service. That in itself covers almost about 4 critical sectors or critical agencies, whether you're talking about defense, you're talking about education or health. If you aggregate all of that, they are not up to 15 trillion. So my question is, how do we deal with this? It's an obligation we've got to meet, but there must be a way that we either restructure or a deliberate attempt to see how we wind it down such that in the future it doesn't continue to hound the budget pressure on us. So I think that is the second point. And the last point is that I also want to speak to some of the expenditure budget. I don't know how well we have scrutinized all of them. The other day, INEC was projecting to build hospital, you know, and with an estimate. I mean, those are not the kind of responsibility that we should be seeing in the budget of agencies. They either use public hospitals. So, and I'm sure that there are several other agencies that are doing the same. You know, for example, if you look at last year's budget of customs, I mean, there are huge amount projected for housing estate and all of that. These are areas where we can mop up revenue in order to enhance the revenues of the federal government. NUPRC, go and look at their budgets. I don't know how well we have really scrutinized those budgets in order to moderate all of their expenditure appetite so that we can enhance the revenue that is meant to, resolve the issues of either the budget, the federal government, or the needs of the people. So, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, I think those are the key areas. Oil revenue. I talked about the oil revenues, and I talked about the debt servicing, and equally the expenditure, scrutinizing the expenditure. So I'd like to stop there for now.
This is about the 18th time I am participating in budget process of defense. Mr. Chairman, this is about the worst budget defense. Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to speak to technicalities of the matters raised by the Honorable Minister and that of the Nigeria Revenue Chairman. What happened is that throughout this budget presentation, when we started, the MDS have reported, over 85% of them have reported nil presentation or nil capital allocations and releases. Over 85% of them. Mr. Chairman, this National Assembly, and this Senate in particular, had given the executive arm of government almost everything that they wanted. Almost everything, 100%. And therefore, it is not easy for representatives to speak to other Nigerians as to why this economy is not doing well. Mr. Chairman, I want to ask them, any one of them can answer the question. Is this economy doing well? What do you take home to Nigerians, informing them that in spite of everything, 2026 will be a different year than 2024 and 2025. Lastly, sir, this National Assembly has spoken severally about the centralized payment system. And up to this period, we are receiving or debating the 2026 budget. We have not had a solution to the centralized payment system. You have also indicated in the past, collaborating what you've said, Mr. Chairman, that this centralized payment system was one of the problems for this country. Where did you find out that this centralized payment system worked in any other country in the world? Why is Nigeria an exception? And in spite of the failure of this centralized payment system, do you hope to change it, or do you want to stick to it? That is my two questions, sir.
I was one of those who expressed doubt when we were having the debates on this budget. Doubt as to whether we'll be able to meet the oil benchmark, target, the production quota, doubt as to whether the estimates about the foreign exchange projections were realistic. And let me say that the minister and your team and the administration, in my view, surprised some of us on the exchange rate. When last year we were having this debate, we were doubtful about the projection that it will be 1,400 to $1. But now, I think it's even getting slightly less than that. Yes, it's slightly getting less than that. You see, for some of us who have been in this, we are committed to the national interest. If we are raising issues and concerns and questions, it's not because we are in opposition for the fun of it. No, we are doing so in the national interest. Now, when you do well and you have surprised, it's also appropriate to say you have tried. So, Honorable Minister, you and your members of your team are trying to at least meet up the target, which some of us were skeptical about. You should do more. And tell the President that on this call, Senator Dixon says, at least he and his federal government and all of you have done well. But you should do better, so that we get to a situation where the exchange rate was in 2023 when you people took over. But I can see the effort being made, and I thought I should commend you. The other issue I wanted to raise has been mentioned by Senator Ningi, which is why the non-release. We make a budget, we don't make a budget as an annual ritual. No. You spend all the time with the Minister of Budget, my good friend, and all of you working the federal apparatus, preparing budget to us. We sometimes even suspend our own vacations, stay for long hours, scrutinizing it, and supporting, as Senator Ninga said, everything that the federal government, the executive arm, all the support they wanted from this National Assembly, from this Senate, we have given it all. But ministry after ministry, the recurring complaint is non-release. Almost zero implementation or performance. That is very sad. So he has already said so, you need to speak to it. The other issue is you talked about shortfalls. I mean, because budget is an estimate about what you expect to get and what you think you might spend. If you don't get, you may not be able to spend. But Nigerians need to know specifically. I don't know if you said so before. I would like you to be specific about the shortfall in terms of percentage and in terms of the real figures, so that even all of us here, members of this committee and Nigerians, can understand the sort of the indices you are dealing with, the dynamics you are working with. And that will inform us to assess you better. Then you also talked about household transfers. Now, for me, a social democrat who likes emphasis on welfare, this is a laudable project. But we need to know how much. I have not seen many people, even in my constituency, I don't know if their stories is different, who says, oh, we have been receiving this. But whether it is effectively done and how we can oversight is another issue. But please, if you can let us know how much really are we saying has gone into this, which is a laudable thing, and I support that. Then the contractors' liabilities. Today you are lucky that you freely drove into this National Assembly with members of your team. Maybe the Contractor Association are not aware that you are coming. And they better not know, Chairman, until they have left. They have left us. But whatever you do here, it is we they come to worry. And rightly so, because we are their representatives. So please, now that you are here, can you speak to the challenges you have? I don't believe that you are doing so deliberately. I've been chief executive myself. But this is an opportunity for you and the government to explain once again the challenges you are grappling with. Include perhaps the issue of that Senator Ningi talked about. That is that centralized system. And I think the Accountant General should be here. I've not seen him before. Okay, he's here. Okay, good. Okay, fantastic, good. So maybe speak to us so that Nigerians and contractors will be more enlightened. Because these contractors you are seeing, they are the people we represent. Then oil and gas revenues, Honorable Minister. Can we have the shortfall level and your performance level? And then the issue Senator Abiru raised about the debt servicing. Thank you very much. Chairman, thank you very much.
Senator Siri Fasui, when you did an estimate of about 1,400. Senator Zunazo, you have the floor. Please go ahead.
Budget is non-compliance with certain laws which has accumulated over the years. I'd like you to be clear about some of these laws, that you think that it is because some of those laws are not being implemented. That is why that the debt profile of contractors is rising. So I'd like to be clear about those laws. Now, 2025 will go down in history as a year that we didn't have any budget, because that is the truth of the matter. Now, even the 30% implementation that we have been promised, as we're having the budget defense now, we discover that most of the agencies do not even have up to 1%, some 2%, of it, even the warrants. In cases where there are warrants, there was no release. So they're bouncing back to us as if the budget was a fluke. So I would like you to talk on that, Honorable Minister, because my colleagues have mentioned it. But it is very critical, because if you watch the budget defense of this year, you'll be shocked about what is going on. Health came here crying, defense came crying, everybody comes crying. Every agency. And what do you expect National Assembly to do? I saw an agency that came here and said what was given to them for 2025 was 9 million naira for their capital. 9 million. And out of the 9 million, it was only a warrant, but there was no release. So it's pitiable. And I don't want us to go down in history as an assembly or a ministry or a government that did not implement 1 year's budget. Something has to happen. Mr. President promised us here when he came for budget defense that everything about 2024, budget presentation, 2024 and 2025, 30% shall be concluded before March 31st. And in that same budget address, he specifically mentioned the people involved. He said, Honorable Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Accountant General of the Federation, Minister of Budget, NRS, and Director of DG Budget Office. So where are we? Because the team is here. So where are we? Are we going to meet up with what Mr. President said about 31st March or not?
Thank you. Dear colleague, I would like to round up this session, the first round of questions, with Senator Adams or Sheomole. I'm coming, sir. After which, I will start another round of questions. Please. So that after Senator Adams or Sheomole, we'll go back to the economic team to respond to the first set of questions, then we'll take the second round of questions. Thank you, and thanks for your understanding. I'm sorry, Senator.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I want to thank you for your leadership. And honorable ministers, thank you for your presentation. I have some worries arising from the minister's presentation. But before I go into that, I want to commend the monetary authorities as headed by this governor of the central bank for whatever he's doing that is enabling the naira to appreciate. Because any one of us who have had the privilege of managing whether subnational revenue or national revenue, the important thing is the purchasing power. So if you budget to spend, let me simplify, 100 million to buy water,
because the exchange rate is 1,700 or 2,000. If it has come down now to 1,300, you can purchase the water without, you can purchase that same bottle of water maybe at 70 naira. So we shouldn't be carried away by paper money illusion. It's about the purchasing power. Yeah. Therefore, for me, we shouldn't bother ourselves about whether naira is appreciating or depreciating. It is not just the factor of the numbers, it's about what it was meant to achieve. That said, so I commend the CBA governor, and I hope the National Assembly should continue to encourage him to sustain whatever tools he's deploying, so that the naira can continue to appreciate and the quality of life will be better, inflation will come down, and this government will have a much more mass-based support. That said, when the minister said, Mr. Chairman, sir, that the debt servicing turned out to be higher than was expected, I had a problem with that. Because by the time you are doing the budget, you know how much you owe, and you know the cost of servicing these debts. So how could you have a shock such that what you thought you would pay to service debts came short of, and so you spent more than was projected? That doesn't readily, it's not self-explanatory, because debts are what you have incurred before. You know the profile. You know who you are credited to, whether it's in naira, in dollar, or euro, and therefore it is reasonable to have 100% appreciation of your debt obligation. The question for us is not whether you should service those debts, but how could you have made error in terms of if I borrow 100 naira from chairman, 200 naira from the computer expert, so they told me, even though he has no network, and so on and so forth. If I'm going to calculate how to pay, but I know what I owe each of them, whether in foreign or local currency, and I can do correct projection. So how could you have underestimated this? Two, I think what we are dealing with now, in whatever way it is put by my distinguished colleagues, is serious issues of trust. And once trust is broken, at the heart of anything is trust, because there's always be a gap between when you make a decision and it attracts support and when you have to translate it. Now, Mr. Chairman, if you go through the high side of the Senate, recorded contributions by senators, including the chairman of appropriation, you had repeatedly told us, and the senators were unanimous, that every borrowing, let me talk slowly, every borrowing should be used only for capital project. I can bring back those minutes and you will see that was the argument put to us where you proposed to borrow. And on that basis, we approved on the understanding that when we are paying back, our children will see the capital project for which this money was borrowed. The money should never be used for recorded expenditure. I know we made that as a condition for approval of all the loans or bonds or whatever is it that you requested for to meet your obligation. As it stands, you have borrowed those money, and yet the evidence from all the FDAs is that those capital projects did not benefit from the borrowing. Why is it so? 1 more minute, sir. 1 more minute, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you. Did it allow so that me and you will belong to the same club of short people who pity me small. 1 minute more, sir. Now, I ask a question, Mr. Chairman. Yes, sir. Let me report myself. I asked this question to a wrong person. That is the Accountant General, who is having another mini conference now, and he may not be able to listen to me. I ask, sir, not a matter of arrogance. I have had the honor and privilege of being a chief executive of a subnational. When revenue falls short of my expectation, I reorder my priorities.
That is natural.
Now,
from all that we had, at least all the committees that I attended, the recorded expenditure, most of them perform at 90%. And that includes travels, foreign travels, local travels, training of doubtful value. I remember I asked somebody, you train people to carry out specific assignment for your ministry, some of which has to do with capital projects. Now that those capital projects were not done, what is the purpose of the training? What did you now use the skill to do? Which means a huge overhead was maintained, and the job they were meant to use those skills to translate did not perform. I would have thought, and I will need your answer on this, if revenue fall, why can't you reduce your recorded commitment and rechannel to capital project? Because the entry point for the masses is those roads that you are doing, those hospitals you are funding, those schools that you are supporting, and all of that. Okay. So, just last one. Please have mercy on me.
It's like you are denying many of our colleagues from mastering.
All right. I conclude by just saying that there is now a big gap. Last year, sir, I was privileged to be here or in another committee. Honorable Minister, you said to us, December 31st, subsidies we give. And Accountant General was always there. That was the day I asked, who is this angel that can do the job that other non-angels were doing before? On that occasion, you said, by 31st December, some of these things will be done, the capital projects. Then you shift the goalpost to 31st. Now, I heard you saying the capital project performed 20-something of 50%, but all the ABAs, including service chiefs, they tell us this is not the case. So I think we need to have a frank talk. We are in the room, we are in the country. Like has been said, not Dixie only made a mistake, sir, when he said it's a progressive. You are the conservative, that's your PDP. We are the progressives.
Thank you.
So we are committed to public welfare.
You only came to pretend to join us. Distinguished colleagues.
So thank you, Chairman, for your patience.
Now, this is 2 minutes time. I want us to stick to it because I have a long list of our colleagues. We want what of observation has been raised, begging for your clarification and answers. Please, you have the floor in 5 minutes to explain all of this. You have the floor. Go ahead.
That there was a state of emergency on security, and securities to be prioritized. There was spending on security. There was spending from Federation account. Vice Chairman, even yesterday, I helped to facilitate and even send the evidence of payment. It was a foreign procurement that was critical. We even, I know we're on camera and so forth, but they even had to call from the counterpart country, and that was a payment for security, was payment for equipment for the security forces even yesterday. So that the fact that there's nothing being spent, sometimes they categorize, but I can assure you that the emergency funding has been given. I can assure you that critical payments, at least twice this year that I know, foreign payments have been made for equipment. So in a nutshell, you are right. It is to be prioritized, and it is within limits being prioritized. Senator Abiru, all revenues. I think what the budget authorities call the 1.84 million barrels per day is a stretch target. It's a stretch target, so that you don't want them going to sleep and saying that we have 1.6 and that's good enough. So it's as long as you don't spend what you don't have, it's a stretch target given to the oil authorities. In terms of forward contracts, you yourself, I'm sure, as you know, whenever such a contract is entered into, the future production actually meets the obligation. However, there's a big margin normally left. So we're not in a situation where we will look at 1.84 million barrels per day and say so much of it is actually not going to come to the Federation account. The actual figures change per day, and we would need NNPC to tell us what they had committed. But I know, for example, that generally, if you have a resource that is in the ground, it's better to sell it even while it's in the ground, or even contract it forward, so that you don't end up like Botswana. Botswana has diamonds in the ground. They're now worth half of what they were before. I'll come back to you on that rather than guessing what NNPC have done. Then Senator Abiru, on debt service, and I think maybe I can take care of Senator Oshomole's issue on debt service as well. We have just come from the G24 opening session, and we broke to come here. We are chairing, Nigeria is chairing, so it's not just that, it's the technical, it's a TGM, the technical group meeting of the G24, and the number one topic, and we have experts, global experts from around the world, even somebody who was my manager when he was at when I was at the World Bank. And the number one topic is that not so much is debt sustainability. And why? Because of the pricing. It is not that the debt to GDP ratio is too high or is not in line with fiscal responsibility or with. It's not that it's not in line with the regulations. It is that the pricing, the interest rate that the developing country as a whole, are forced to pay in the international market is where the difficulty comes from. And there's a hue and cry around the world that something must be done about the high price of debt so that the high debt servicing costs can come down. I'll deal with the issue of variable rates shortly, but no less a personality than His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, has dived in to that all-important area and called for an African credit rating agency. He's calling for affordable financing. Once you have affordable financing, you're home and dry. So the issue of the not being able to predict interest rates, apart from that, you'll be a billionaire if you could, but leaving that aside, sir, or you'd have even more than you have, sir. Leaving that aside, the issue is that the president is a Democrat. The president believes in I'll call it the autonomy, independence of central bank under the law. So he cannot dictate interest rates, and we have seen around the world what it means and how important it is to be able to. But if you cannot, so for instance, in 2023, when the president assumed office, he was paying 8% for treasury bills. It went as high as 24%, because what it is, the stability, the appreciation of the exchange rate is directly related to being able to attract foreign exchange. And a large part of being able to attract foreign exchange is giving them the price they want. Then they give you the foreign exchange. Then you have stability. So what we've gained on the monetary side, you have to pay for on the fiscal side, because you have to now prioritize. Otherwise, the whole thing unravels. The reason why they gave you the dollars is because you're giving them that interest rate amongst other factors. If you don't give them that interest rate, then they will move the dollars, the exchange rate will move. So that's the mechanism. And so that's the reason why we have to prioritize debt service and why we cannot predict it. Thank you. The capital, borrowing for capital, of course, we are going to borrow for capital. It goes without saying. And you know, sometimes what I would say, distinguishing as much as possible, that is a dictum we try to stick to. I will explain. There was a borrowing for capital approved, which is part of what you are saying, which was directly to go to certain capital projects. There's an explanation for that, which belongs, I think, in a smaller gathering of why something was committed and it hasn't arrived yet. Was committed for, you gave permission to a certain borrowing for a certain purpose, and it should be used for that purpose. I agree 100%, and when given a chance, I'll give explanation. Senator Ningi, the economy is growing. The economy is growing at 4%. Inflation is down. The exchange rate is stable. Reserves are up. We are attracting investment. Shell has just come with $20 billion. We are hoping for non-oil investment, and we're looking, as well as oil, and we're looking in no distant future to be able to announce even others that are investing. Dangote is investing, is part of it. And those investments help us to limit what the government has to do. You know, we want 30% of GDP to be put into investments. That will grow the economy at about 7% per annum. Okay. That will bring down poverty. However, of that 30%, the more the private sector brings, the less the government has to bring. And you know very well, there are investments which are being made by government, which perhaps the private sector can also, substitute. Infrastructure, airports, ports, even toll roads, and so on and so forth. So what I would say about the issue that you raised, sir, is that there is benefit from what is going on now. And I will also say that, just to remind us, that it is the National Assembly that dictated that the 2024 capital budget should go to the year end. So it's like...
Upon your request. Upon your request.
Yeah. The capital budget.
Of which year, sir?
2024.
To do what, sir?
To go to December.
Yes, we extended the budget till December.
Exactly.
And as we speak, part of this yet to be funded. And we have to now move this outstanding balance into 2026. 2026. 2026, yeah? 2026. I will explain better.
Let me address the issue of...
Honorable Minister, sir, why are we not funding 2025 budget? It's a topical question. So we want you to speak to that.
Distinguished Chairman,
yes, sir.
Senator Ningi, I must say that under the 2026 budget, to the extent that everything in the past has been cleared up, which it will be, yes, it will be. I must say that in future, the issue, particularly the one of the timing of contractual liabilities under the law, that will no longer arise. And that's an important part of balancing revenue and expenditure. And as I said,
team are here for us to speak to all issues that we have asked. And I know one of those issues in the front burner is the funding of 2025 budget. I'm coming on 24, which the president have promised that it will be funded 30% by 31st of March. And our concern is, up to now, nothing has been done. and that's the question you're asking, that by 31st of March, if nothing is done, what do? So we have to still move that money again into 2026. And we have asked the direct question, and I've put emphasis on it, so that the Honorable Minister can tell us. But what he's saying now is that what is he has planned is that they are funding 2025. That he has not seen anything beyond that is not yet being funded. And that is the clarification or the clarity I want the minister to speak to, so that all members can be clear about it, that the president made the promise and they are working around the clock to ensure that that promise is fulfilled. So, Honorable Minister, can you speak directly to that? Then I come to Chairman NRS, who wants to say something.
What I was not funded was now moved to service-wide vote 2026.
Correct.
The 30%, there was a plan for it. You provided the funding, and that was the plan.
Yes, I agree with the Honorable Minister of Finance, which is specifically designated to fund the 2025 Appropriation Act. But as we speak, we don't know what's happening. The Honorable Minister of State, who is now giving this responsibility to handle that, we also speak. But before I come to her, the NRS Chairman, you have something to add to this?
For the commendation, I just want to put it in perspective. And the perspective is that when economic works, it works for everybody. And that is what we've seen. It's just as a result of the reform being led by Mr. President that we have exchange rate down, we have inflation down, but the crux of the matter, which is what I hear from all conversation here, is that why is budget not being funded? And the answer is also in this room. It is what I think, by God's grace, we will correct this year. Budget funding comes from realistic budgets. And we need to understand that. And that is where we started from. And I've preached this. Budget efficiency is not in the quantum of the budget. It is in the amount you can carry out. And I will put it in perspective. If what we think we have is 10 naira, you told me that what you have this year is 10 naira, I will go and buy one cap, one shirt, one shoe, and one slippers. But if you give me the impression that I have 100 naira, the first 10 naira I can use it to go and buy 10 caps, no shirt, no trouser, thinking that when the next one comes, I will use it for shirt and the other one will never come, and I have problem of even the cap, I can't wear it because I can't go out naked. And that is the question where we started from. Now, I just want us to, without saying let's forget the past, that the new realistic way of budgeting that we've started now, let's just go on with it. Because when I look at the issues, starting from my senator, when you talk about prepaid, whether we've sold the crude and everything, sometimes we forget the structure that we have in the country. NNPC is no more corporation for federal government. NNPC is a limited liability company. It is like Mobil, like Shell, like other. The only connection between NNPC and Nigeria today is their taxes and royalty. Let them produce 2 million barrels or 3 million barrels. It has no impact on federation revenue because this crude produce is being shared by Shell, Mobil. The only connection between government and whatever we produce is the taxes and royalty they pay, which means the focus has to be on the cost of production. Because if the price is 64 and then they use 55 to produce, what is the difference? So we need to know, and it is PIA is passed in this place, we know. So the changes that we have to make is what we started making now. And it is in how much can we realistically get from oil. If you look at the projection, which is why I said that we are coming back to you, the projection is that 47% of this amount of the total oil company, oil in Nigeria will come to us. We are no more corporation.
So
Apart
how
from-
realistic is
That
this
is what I'm
budget?
saying, and that is what I told you. So where problem comes, when people talk about centralized or decentralized, if you have 1 naira, whether it's paid centrally or you decentralize it, it cannot cover 20 naira liability. So it's not about the mode of payment or whether decentralized. If you decentralize, you would not transfer money that is not available. I'm coming, sir. I'm coming. So the realistic way is what we are doing. When budget, which is the starting point, when it is realistic, whatever, and that is what Mr. President promised. If you listen to what Mr. President said during the budget presentation, he said, guns are those days that will run this and that one. Now, I know, and I can speak on behalf of the economic team, whatever Mr. President has agreed as to the implementation of budget, he has planned to carry it out before the deadline he has given you. That I can tell you. Okay. Going for what he has promised you. I know the work is underway to get that done. And going forward, that realistic way.
Wait now, hold on now. Please.
That realistic way of getting it done. So we have to do it. And that is when the real funding, as we propose, or you want it, can ever come. But when we have the budget where the assumption is not real, so no matter the kind of system we put in place, no matter it will not work. And that is what...
Chairman.